Welcome to our deep dive, everybody. And today we're taking a look at advanced connectivity. Seems like you've been doing a ton of research on this. Some really fascinating articles in here.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing what's happening in this field. I think it's something that's going to affect all of us in ways we can't even imagine yet.
Well, that's what we're here to try and figure out, right? Like, I get that it's more than just having like super fast internet, but what is advanced connectivity?
Well, I think the best way to think about it is it's not just about faster internet speeds. It's about creating a world where pretty much everything is connected. And I mean everything. Your phone, your car, your refrigerator, even like street lights and traffic signals.
So it's like the internet, but on a much grander scale, like a web that connects not just people, but like devices and systems and, well, everything.
Exactly. It's a network of networks, really, all working together seamlessly. And it's got the potential to revolutionize pretty much every aspect of our lives.
Okay, so that's the big picture. But let's zoom in a little. What kinds of technologies are we actually talking about here? I know you've got some sources in there on 5G, the Internet of Things, even something called SD-WAN. What's the common thread?
Well, they all fall under the umbrella of what we call advanced connectivity. But they use different technologies to achieve that connectivity. Some are wired, some are wireless.
Right. So like on the wired side, we've got good old Ethernet cables, and then those crazy fast fiber optic connections. Those are kind of like the backbone of the internet, right?
Yep. And fiber optics especially are getting more and more common. They can handle huge amounts of data at incredible speeds. But, of course, wires can only take you so far.
That's where wireless comes in, I guess. I mean, we've all got Wi-Fi in our homes and businesses.
Yeah.
And then there's 5G, which is supposed to be like super fast and powerful.
It is. 5G is a real game changer. It's going to make mobile internet so much faster and more reliable. It's going to enable things like self-driving cars and remote surgery.
Whoa, okay. That's getting pretty futuristic. But what about those places where traditional connections just don't reach? I'm thinking like, remote areas or developing countries.
Yeah, that's where satellite internet comes in. It's got the potential to bring connectivity to even the most isolated parts of the world. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
But there was one term in your materials that really caught my eye. IOMT. What is that exactly?
Ah, yes. The Internet of Medical Things. This is where things get really interesting. Essentially, it's about connecting medical devices and sensors to the internet. So, like, imagine your pacemaker sending data directly to your doctor, or a sensor in your pill bottle reminding you to take your meds.
Wait, so, like, my doctor could be monitoring my heart rate in real time. That's both amazing and kind of creepy.
Well, it has huge potential for improving healthcare. Early detection of problems, remote patient monitoring, even things like personalized medicine tailored to your specific genetic makeup.
Okay, yeah. When you put it like that, it sounds pretty revolutionary. But it also makes me wonder about, like, privacy and security. I mean, if everything is connected, doesn't that make us more vulnerable?
That's a really important point, and one we should definitely dive into. But first, I think it's helpful to understand the different types of advanced connectivity, moving from familiar, like those wired options, to the more cutting-edge, wireless, satellite, and even IOMT.
All right, that makes sense. So let's start with the basics. What are the main differences between wired and wireless connections? Like, what are the pros and cons of each?
Well, on the wired side, you've got reliability and speed. Fiber optic cables especially can handle huge amounts of data with almost no lag. But of course, the downside is you're tethered to a physical cable.
Yeah, not exactly the most portable solution. So wireless gives you that freedom of movement, right? You can take your laptop to the park or your phone pretty much anywhere. But isn't it like slower and less reliable than wired connections?
It can be. Wi-Fi, for example, is great for everyday use, but it can be affected by interference and distance from the router. 5G, on the other hand, is getting incredibly fast and reliable, even rivaling wired connections in some cases.
And what about satellite internet? Where does that fit in?
Satellite is great for reaching remote areas where it's difficult or expensive to lay cables. But it can be affected by weather conditions, and latency can be an issue due to the vast distances signals have to travel.
So each technology has its own strengths and weaknesses. And we've got these articles in here talking about how advanced connectivity is transforming everything from healthcare to transportation to, well, pretty much everything. But before we get too carried away with all the amazing possibilities, maybe we should take a look at the potential downsides. I mean, there's got to be some, right?
Oh, absolutely. As with any powerful technology, there are always risks and challenges. But to really understand those, we need to dig deeper into how these technologies are actually being used.
Okay, so let's do that. What are some of the most exciting and, well, maybe a little scary applications of advanced connectivity that you've come across in your research?
Well, one area that Schneppat, the author of one of the essays here, really focused on is healthcare. He talked about how the IOMT is already being used to monitor patients remotely, allowing doctors to intervene earlier and potentially prevent serious health problems.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Like, imagine if your smartwatch could detect early signs of a heart attack and alert emergency services. But I also can't help but think about, like, what if that data falls into the wrong hands?
Right.
Or what if there's a glitch in the system?
Those are valid concerns, and ones that Schneppat addressed in his writing as well. He argued that as we become more reliant on these interconnected systems, we need to prioritize data security and privacy. And we need to make sure that these systems are designed with redundancy and fail-safes to minimize the risk of errors.
Well, it's like the more connected we become, the more important it is to think about the potential consequences and to put safeguards in place.
Exactly. But, despite the challenges, it's hard not to get excited about the potential of advanced connectivity. I mean, just think about the possibilities. Smarter cities, more efficient transportation, personalized healthcare, and who knows what else we haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff. But I think it's also important to remember that this technology is still in its early stages. And as with any new technology, there are going to be bumps along the road.
Absolutely. And those bumps might not always be technical. There are also social, ethical, and even political implications to consider. But, that's part of what makes this such a fascinating topic to explore.
Okay, so we've laid out the basics. We've talked about some of the potential benefits and risks. Where do we go from here? What are some of the specific challenges that we need to address as we move towards this more connected future?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be ensuring that everyone benefits from advanced connectivity. Right now, there's a real risk of a digital divide emerging, where those who have access to the latest technology pull further and further ahead of those who don't.
Yeah, like if only the wealthy can afford things like self-driving cars and personalized healthcare, that's going to create even more inequality in society. So how do we prevent that from happening?
Well, it's going to require a concerted effort from governments, businesses, and communities to ensure that everyone has access to affordable, reliable internet. We also need to make sure that people have the skills and education they need to thrive in a digital economy.
So it's not just about building the infrastructure, it's about making sure that everyone can benefit from it. And I imagine that's going to be a huge challenge, especially as technology continues to evolve at such a rapid pace.
It is. But it's a challenge that we have to meet if we want to create a more equitable and just society. Because ultimately, advanced connectivity has the potential to connect us in ways that we never thought possible.
I think it's a great point to end on. Advanced connectivity is about so much more than just faster internet speeds. It's about connecting people, ideas, and opportunities in ways that have the potential to transform our world for the better.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. There's still so much we don't know about the future of advanced connectivity, but that's what makes it so exciting. It's a chance to shape the world we want to live in.
So to all you listeners out there, I encourage you to stay curious, keep learning, and engage in the conversation about the future of advanced connectivity, because this is a future that we're all creating together.
Yeah, and I think Schneppat makes a really compelling argument that one of the biggest risks we face is the potential for a digital divide.
Oh, yeah. That's something that came up in a few of the other articles, too.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea is that as advanced connectivity becomes more and more essential for things like education, healthcare, and even just participating in society, those who don't have access to it are going to be left behind.
Exactly. And it's not just about access to the internet itself. It's also about having the devices, the skills, and the digital literacy to actually use it effectively.
Right. Like, what good is a super fast internet connection if you don't have a computer or you don't know how to use it?
Exactly. And, Schneppat argues that this digital divide is not just a technological problem, it's a social and economic problem as well. Because if we don't address it, it's going to exacerbate existing inequalities and create new ones.
So it's like a vicious cycle. Those who are already disadvantaged are going to have a harder time accessing and benefiting from advanced connectivity, which in turn is going to make it even harder for them to catch up.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to think about this issue holistically. It's not just about providing internet access. It's about creating a more equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive in a digital world.
So what can we actually do about it? I mean, it seems like a pretty daunting challenge.
Well, I think one of the most important things is to make sure that everyone has access to affordable, high-quality internet service. And that means investing in infrastructure, especially in rural and underserved areas.
Right. Because right now there are still huge parts of the world where people don't even have basic internet access.
Exactly. And even in places where there is internet access, it's often too expensive or unreliable for many people to afford.
So we need to make sure that internet access is treated as a public good, not just a commodity.
I think that's a really important point, because just like we wouldn't deny someone access to clean water or electricity, we shouldn't deny them access to the internet.
Right. It's become so essential for so many aspects of modern life that it's basically a human right at this point.
I agree. And, Schneppet also talks about the need for digital literacy programs to help people develop the skills they need to use the internet effectively. Because it's not enough to just provide access. You also need to make sure that people know how to use it.
Yeah, like how to search for information, how to protect their privacy, how to avoid scams, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And, this is something that we need to be thinking about at all levels of education, from elementary school all the way up to adult education programs.
So it's not just about teaching kids how to code, it's about teaching everyone how to be responsible and informed digital citizens.
Exactly, because ultimately, advanced connectivity is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
It's up to us to make sure that we're using it to create a better world, not a more divided one. I think that's a good place to leave it for this part of our deep dive. We've talked a lot about the potential benefits and risks of advanced connectivity, and we've started to explore some of the challenges that we need to address as we move towards a more connected future. But there's still so much more to discuss. So stay tuned for part 3, where we'll delve even deeper into the world of advanced connectivity and what it means for all of us.
So picking up where we left off, I think one thing that really struck me in these articles is just how quickly this field is evolving. I mean, even just a few years ago, some of the things we're talking about today would have sounded like science fiction.
Right. It's like we're living in the future, but it's happening so fast it's hard to even wrap your head around it sometimes.
Yeah.
So where do we go from here? What's next for advanced connectivity?
Well, Schneppet talks a lot about the potential of 6G, which is already being developed, even though 5G is still being rolled out in many places.
6G. Wow. Okay, so that's just going to be like even faster internet speeds?
It's going to be way more than that. We're talking about speeds that are like 100 times faster than 5G, but it's also about things like lower latency, which means basically no lag time between when you send a signal and when it's received.
So like real-time communication, but even more real-time?
Exactly. And that opens up a whole world of possibilities for things like holographic communication, immersive virtual reality, and even things we haven't even thought of yet. Schneppet even talks about the potential for 6G to enable things like telepresence surgery, where a surgeon could operate on a patient remotely using a robot controlled by a 6G network.
Whoa, okay, that's next level. But I also can't help but think about the potential downsides of all this connectivity. Like, what about privacy? If everything is connected, does that mean we're constantly being tracked and monitored?
That's a legitimate concern, and it's something we need to be very mindful of as these technologies develop. Schneppet emphasizes the importance of things like strong encryption, data anonymization, and clear regulations around data collection and use. He even argues that we need to start thinking about digital rights in the same way we think about human rights.
Right, because if our data isn't protected, then all this connectivity could end up being more of a curse than a blessing.
Exactly, but I think it's important to remember that technology itself is neutral. It's how we use it that matters, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations now while these technologies are still being developed, so we can make sure that they're used in ways that benefit all of us.
So to wrap things up, it sounds like we're standing at the edge of a really exciting, but also potentially scary new world. Advanced connectivity has the power to transform our lives in incredible ways, but it also comes with risks that we need to be aware of and address.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like we're holding this incredible tool, but we need to learn how to use it wisely. And I think the key is to approach it with a sense of both optimism and caution. We need to be excited about the possibilities, but also realistic about the challenges.
Well said. I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. Advanced connectivity is a powerful force that's shaping our world, and it's up to all of us to make sure that it's used for good. So stay informed, stay engaged, and let's work together to create a future where advanced connectivity benefits everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious and connected.